Hello, folks. How are you doing? Well, middle of the night or morning is when this will come out to you. Now, I want to talk about very practical subjects right now, which I think will be helpful to you. There's been a little bit of talk going around about people evicted from their places in the US. And I have a little bit of experience with this. Now, I was following a refugee who was in Michigan being handled by a very neglectful agency. And she was there for, I think, 3 weeks at this lonely apartment building. And she was planning to leave, to outmigrate. And suddenly, this, I think it was a big red paper appeared on her door saying eviction notice, and it didn't say much more. And that wasn't a proper eviction notice. And these are, I believe, scare tactics. Uh, it's really unusual when you consider that a friend of the caseworker owned the apartment complex, and this lady had only been there for 3 weeks. I find this really appalling and shocking and awful. Um, so what I want you to know is evictions are usually because people move in and really don't intend to pay the rent. If a landlord knows you are a refugee, getting on your feet, uh, starting a job, uh, you can talk to them. They're human beings. Um, the apartment buildings are a little bit harder. They want to strong arm you if you can't pay the rent when it's your time to pay the rent. But your situation is completely different as a refugee coming and starting your life. A landlord will understand that you're just about to get paid your first paycheck, you just got your job, uh, and sometimes the refugee agency should be paying another month rent, but they're saying no, and you're having maybe a little trouble, or maybe it is time um, for you to go ahead and start paying that rent. And they will understand you've got to communicate with the landlord if there's a little bit of trouble. This information, I think, is just blown up rumor, I believe. I haven't heard of anyone evicted. And usually eviction is a process. Um, they first try to work with you to see when you can pay the rent. And if it's clear that you're not going to be able to pay the rent, or you won't talk to them, or you're being difficult, uh, then they may go to the process of eviction. But it's a process. So since Texas is such a popular state, I thought I would bring up the eviction paperwork from Texas. Okay, can I do this a little bit faster, please? Okay, here we go. And we have here a Texas eviction notice form. Now, this is just a basic form. As you can see, I clicked non-payment of rent, and it's just notifying you that they're wanting you to pay up, or they're going to go to the place where you file officially for the eviction of the tenants. 3-day notice to quit. Okay, I would say this 3-day uh, notice is your time to rectify the situation. Then they will go to the proper procedure for eviction. The notice is given to you, the address, lease start date. They'll tell you how much is owed, total amount due, instructions for payment. Uh, if uh, if it's not made in the required time frame, you're going to have to quit the premises. But it is uh, it is a process because then they must go to, okay, eviction laws, rent grace period 2 days, non-payment of rent 3 days. Then they will start the process, non-compliance 3 days. So that's pretty quick. Most landlords don't want to do the process. It involves going to the court, filling out a lot of paperwork, paying a fee. Um, okay, the landlord cannot shut off the utilities. Uh, a landlord has the right to change the lock for late rent only if it is specified in the lease. Oh, geez, yeah. You better look at that lease. State law requires landlords to notify the tenant of this intent at least 5 days before changing the lock. Oh, this is Texas now. They're pretty harsh in Texas. Up here in Connecticut, it's much more involved. It takes a lot more to get people out of a property. Um, yeah, you've got to give them notice, and then you've got to file with the local court. The landlord has to file with the Justice of the Peace Court to file a complaint for eviction, and they've got to pay fees. So it's a process, and I believe after 30 days of this form being filed, um, yeah, the tenant can reply to the court through the form and give your side of the story, get a court hearing date, and attend the scheduled hearing. The tenant still has the right to appeal if the landlord prevails in court, if he wins in court. Um, but these things take time. Uh, and you really shouldn't worry about this because you're not an unsympathetic tenant. Of course, you have to get on your feet as soon as you can and be able to pay your rent and hope that the agency uh, helps you out as much as they can. But I have been watching a show that is, I think, really interesting. And it's called Squatter Hunters. And I've been following this guy on YouTube for a couple of years. And it looks like A&E is picking up him for a show. And this is about squatters now.
Okay, you're a squatter, and I have a lease for the property. We are now officially roommates. From my understanding, you were house sitting here. You overstayed your welcome. You are being filmed. You are on body cam right now.
No, 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 no. But you don't realize this. You can do that if you want to, but your ass is gonna go to jail. Be smart. Don't be a fool. Don't be a fool. Get out of my
Oh, okay, this is pretty funny. But this is a man that has made it his cause to get squatters out of houses. These are not people that pay rent and then have trouble. These are people who intend to squat in somebody else's house and not pay rent for as long as they can. And sometimes it takes a year, up to a year to get these people out in California. That's where he is, and he'll be having his show on A&E. Um, it's his first season this year. And I just find it very interesting, the kind of people that will take possession of someone else's house and move in and refuse to leave. Um, his mother got her house moved in, the people moved in when they had it vacant and were selling it. And it took a long time for him to get them out of there because squatters have tenant rights and tenants have more rights than landlords. So I wouldn't worry about this eviction thing at all. I think it's a real rumor gone wild. I haven't heard of anyone being evicted. All right, the next thing I want to talk about are children. And I want to just remind everybody that in America, children have rights, and corporal punishment, so spanking and on all this that you can do to make them behave, or parents do it, some don't, some do, uh, is frowned upon in some areas, um, and it can get you in trouble. And now your children go to school, and if they say, "Oh, my parent is abusive to me," uh, no matter what that means, if they say this to a teacher, the school reports to the Department of Family and Children. So this could be a problem. And I just want you to think about that. If you're in your apartment and the children are getting wild and you're, people are yelling and things like that are happening in your apartment and people are close by, who knows? They may call the police and say there's a disturbance and things like this. This sort of thing happens here, and I just want you to be aware of this. Now, to let you know where I stand, I will tell you that I was living down in Virginia, and I have three children, and we were living down in Virginia, way south in Virginia, and I'll show a picture of my three. And my children did get spanked a little bit, and here they are. My son, my daughter, my son, and neighbor girl, Jennifer. So uh, they came home from school one day very down, and they said that they were told at school that Virginia just passed a law that parents could use corporal punishment on their children to a certain degree. You know, hitting their legs with a little switch, a little twig, or spanking with a hand or something like that. And they were very down about this. I guess all the kids were down about this. But my daughter she's almost a perfect child. And then my youngest he was a perfect child, in my opinion. But my middle child, on the other hand, oh boy, oh boy. So just hanging from the chandeliers, you know, breaking things, attacking his brother or sister, and fighting over toys, and just in general, difficult child. So when he turned 21, he said, "Mom, I was a terrible child. I was so destructive. I was so bad. You should have hit me more." So I don't know if Virginia still has this specific law, but it was making an allowance for parents who wanted to spank their children when they were bad. And yes, I kind of agree with this concept when they're quite bad, although I can't remember spanking them, actually. One of my favorite pictures here. Hmm. Okay. Yes, that's what it looked like with me and my middle child. Absolutely. Okay. So just something for you to think about, the way you discipline your children. You know, if you're very harsh, it could be an issue here, and you need to know about that. The last thing I want to talk about just for a minute is this Medicaid. They're saying no Medicaid for refugees after October. And I can't imagine that it would just completely end. Right now, if you cannot get the state Medicaid, which I think is funded by the federal government anyhow, but it's administered by the state. And some states don't give certain people Medicaid, like Texas doesn't give adults with no children Medicaid. But then your agency should apply for refugee medical assistance for you. It functions like Medicaid, and for at least 4 months, you are entitled to that. So maybe that might be what they'll have to do after October. Everybody will have to get this refugee medical assistance through the agency. But we'll have to see about that. That's pretty shocking. But don't worry about it. I believe you'll always be able to get this medical aid, at least for the first 4 months. So it's very important that your agency apply for this for you right away because it's only for the first 4 months. If they wait a couple of months to apply for it and you need medication or you need to be seen, that's a problem. And that's all I wanted to talk about today, I do believe. Mm-hmm. All right. Have a good Sunday, everybody.